So, yesterday on NPR they were talking about how people with developmental disabilities are getting exploited, especially that their sexual assault rate is 7 times that of other people, and that's probably dramatically underreported. And part of the problem is the culture, the caretaker culture, and how a lot of people don't have control over their own money at all. And I had that conversation with Tommy about the amount of money I was being given, because if they, people on SSDI have a higher rate of exploitation than people on SSI. And so people get really offended when they see that when I have met my basic needs and I try to save my money for my hobbies and my pets and upgrading my situation a little bit, they get really upset about that. And whenever anybody's doing anything that can be translated into math, when there's people around doing scams involving the books, then they get really aggressive. So when I go to, when I go to the Catholic charities organized places like the Hub and the Community Kitchen, and people get weird with me. Like they give me coffee creamer that has maggots in it, or they try to give me completely rotten vegetables, or they act like I'm a prostitute. I'm thinking, Catholic Charities itself is the biggest of the ripping off the disabled places, because they try to keep the disabled looking really, really poorly cared for. And they use that to ask for more and more money for people. But the more and more money you give them, the more and more poorly, because you're encouraging these people to keep these people poorly because you give them money for doing so. If people start looking like, despite all our problems, we can, if you let things mellow a little bit, my plants, that is a 2-year-old fern. And it's been through hell and back, but I've kind of figured out what I need to do to care for it. And all this pathos you see everywhere, that was one little pot of pathos. And I'm starting to figure that out. It needs more water than it says. And it takes when you repot it, it takes it a little while for the roots to get established. And then once that happens, then it starts hollering, feed me, see more. But, people get really aggressive. I mean, they would not let me have cable. I paid for cable, and they would not let me have it. And, it's all in the math thing. Because this is kind of vague. Who knows? Maybe I shoplifted all this stuff. But cable, they cut your cable off if you don't pay for that. I did not shoplift all this stuff. But, yeah. And it's like I was thinking about my birds, they're finally starting to turn into people. Sonny's still a little slower on that, but Olaf is really starting to feel like, everything's casual around here. He just does whatever he wants to. And, that's taken a long time to get that, get him to get like that. And, if people like us start to normalize, people might get different ideas about how we should be funded and cared for.